Hi everyone, my name is Tori, this is Novel Life, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my July wrap-up to share with you. So I did not do a July mid-month wrap-up because my reading has really slowed down. So for the whole month of July, I read 15 books, which is still really good, but I used to read like 30 books a month. So my reading has significantly slowed down, which I'm not mad about. Like, I'm not mad at all that I've slowed down my reading because I'm reading like really good books. My star ratings are pretty high compared to like when I was constantly like reading 30 books a month or something like that. So I decided to not do mid-month wrap-ups anymore. So we have 15 books to talk about in this video. That's kind of a lot. I like sitting down at the end of the month or at the beginning of the next month and wrapping up what I read just because I like to do that. But like I said, 15 books, 12 were contemporary romances and 3 were fantasy romances. I had 2 5-star reads, a 4 4.5 stars, a 4 4 stars, 4 3.5 stars, and then 1 I didn't rate because I read it for work. So with all that being said, let's just go ahead and dive right in because I did read a lot of good books that I'm really excited to talk about, and my hair is annoying me today and it's hot. So the first book I picked up in July was Why Are You Here by Brianna Jean. So I wanted a book that was very much a all-encompassing, emotional damage, toxic romance, and this book gave it to me. So this is a first in a trilogy, I'm pretty sure, and I did not continue. I want to. These 2 characters are so toxic and so bad for each other, but I really love them. So basically, one character is a rock star, our female character. She's just trying to figure out her life, honestly. Like, she's just trying to figure out what she wants to do. She's figuring out like everything like that, right? So she goes to a party with her friend and she kind of like goes up to the rooftop, and that's where she meets our main male character. I wouldn't say he's a rock star because he doesn't like sing rock music. He's a well-known rapper. Like, he's a solo artist. He does collabs and stuff, but he's very well off. Now, this book has a lot of triggers for a lot of dark things, self-harm. Basically, our female character, when she lived in New York, I think it was New York, she was about to commit suicide, and she listened to some of their music, and it kind of like inspired her to save her life. So she always says that like his music saved her life. And so when she meets him, she's kind of like starstruck, and they have this like really intense conversation that makes him think. And he's like, you know, I've had all these people around me and girls come up to me, and it's one of those things where it's nice to have a refreshing conversation with a woman who's not like just trying to sleep with me. So then their story goes from there. It is toxic. It is emotional. They hurt each other on purpose. Both of them do, because they both have a past. Like, it's because they both have a past and they need to like clear the air type of a thing, but it is so good. Cheyenne from That Tall Book Girl recommended it to me like twice before I picked it up. So happy I picked it up. That was such a good read. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was almost perfect. The ending felt a little rushed with like how it set up the next book. Besides that, it was still a really good read. I highly recommend. I think I already put it in a toxic romance recommendations video because I was obsessed. The next book I read was One Touch by Lena Hendricks. So I read One Look a little while ago. I listened to the audio for this one and I gave it 3.5 stars. This is not my favorite. Honestly, besides it being like a brother's best friend, enemies to lovers, basically our main male character comes back to the town where she's at. And she comes home too, and they kind of are like renovating her, I think it's her grandmother's house. It's her grandmother's house because it's very run down. And it's just one of those things where like everything was just okay. Like, it was a good book. The writing was good. It kept my attention, but it wasn't like blow my socks off. Like, oh my God, I absolutely adored this book and everything like that. So it's one of those things where I enjoyed it, but One Look is my favorite. Even though the beginning was a little rocky, it kept my attention more than this book. Like, it's a 0.5 star off, honestly. It was something I would recommend. It's just not my favorite. There's a lot of enemies to lovers parts, like a lot of them like going at it. And while it was fun, the banter was really good. It's just like enemies to lovers is not always my favorite. Like, it has to be done really well for me to be like, hell yes, love that book. Then I picked up a new release by Avery Keelan. You guys know that I loved All Sides by Avery Keelan, and she released Shutout, I think on July 1st. I think that's when the book came out. 5 stars. This book was so freaking good. If you know me, listen, when there's a character that loves pink the way that this female character does, like, she has pink hair, everything's pink, and everyone has always told her like, oh, you're too much, that's too much, like, why are you doing this, why are you doing that? But our hero does not give a fuck about that. He embraces it. He buys her like a pink coffee maker because she has ADHD, so like she can't drink caffeinated coffee, but she still likes the taste of coffee. So like they always have to, she has to make her own decaf coffee, but she lives in a house with 3 other hockey players. One is her brother, and our main male character Our hero, he is actually the person that she had a one-night stand with before she even moved to the town. She had like a one-night stand at a party with him, and she recognized him by his tattoo on his hand because he has a very like specific one. It was such a good hockey romance. Like when I read it, I was so intrigued and I could not stop reading. I loved the character development. I loved the forbidden hiding their relationship because her brother is one of the teammates. So it was so good. So good. Then I read a fantasy romance, and I'm actually really surprised I stuck with this book and I didn't DNF it. And that was Fate of a Royal by Megan Brandy and Amo Jones. So I did read this for work, so I'm not going to give it my like a star rating, but I'm going to talk about my thoughts. I would recommend this book if you are new to fantasy romance, but you like the darker edge of some fantasy romances. This is it. So Amo Jones and Megan Brandy separately, when I have read them, they're not my favorites. They're like Amo Jones have just been all right. Like it doesn't always hit with me. It's kind of more of like it was okay. Megan Brandy, I didn't like the book that I read. Put them two together, I really, really enjoyed this book. I had a hard time. Like I was trying to focus on work-wise, not like if it's a good read, but I was like getting so like hooked to the story. There's two worlds. There's a human world, and then you have like the magical world. And they have this, there's four brothers. One is like Knight's best friend, who is our hero. And this book does it on a cliffhanger, I will say that. But basically they have their own like magic university or whatever, but it's kind of hidden from humans. And if they use magic, like there's this house party going on and it's like warded so humans can't see, but like she's walking by and she sees, and she's like sees Knight like having sex with a girl, or like a girl going down on him on the front porch, thinking like no one can see, and they like connect, and he's like, why can she see me? She's human. So there's obviously something there with them, and I don't want to say anything like too much because I feel like if you just go into it, you can tell Amo wrote the hero's point of view and Megan Brandy wrote the female point of view, and I was not mad at it because Amo Jones does some crazy shit with her characters, and Knight is absolutely bananas, but I really liked it. Was not expecting the twist at the end, so I do know that the next book is coming out in September, and that is the conclusion for these two characters. So that in this series that they're doing, 2 books are for each brother, so it's like a duet for each one, which I really enjoyed. So that one was really good. Then I did a Patreon exclusive read along, so I'm going to talk about all 3 books of this series really quickly, but the first one that I read was Wildcat by Rebecca Jinchak. This one was a good start to this hockey romance series. Basically, our main male character sees our female character and was like, you're the one, I love you. Not I love you, but like, I see you, I'm interested in you, I'm gonna go after you. She is the coach's daughter, and he does not know that. Well, it's a new coach, and she just comes back after traveling the world. Her ex, who is a Formula 1 driver, broke up with her, or she broke up with him, so she's like back home trying to figure out what she wants to do. She doesn't really want to go to college. She meets him at a college party actually before, but he's taking like summer classes just because he wants to like kind of finish up schooling, even though he like went into the NHL. And so he's a little bit older than her. I gave this one 4 stars. It was actually really, really good. My favorite in the series though is Wild About You by Rebecca Jinchak. I gave this 4.5 stars. It's a second chance romance. Our main male character, he's like the guardian to his sister. His sister's like 18 though, but like she's struggling. Their mom is like not great, so she goes to live with him, and he's like the rookie of the team, like just trying to get everything started, focusing on hockey, and now he has to take care of her. She's going to school, and one of the school teachers is actually his ex from like years and years and years ago when he broke up with her before he went to college, because he wanted her to have like the college experience without someone like an athlete, you know what I mean? And it was one of those things where I was hooked on the story at a hard time stopping. Love the second chance aspect, love the development. It was like both characters had their own development, and while it was second chance, I didn't feel like anything was rushed at all. It was so good. Third book in the series is not my favorite, and I kind of don't really remember a lot of it, and that's Wild Ever After. Even though my patrons, this was their favorite. I was like, I just did not care about our female character. I gave it 3.5 stars. Like, it wasn't bad. I liked the main male character because he's one of the other teammates that's more like quiet. It's a marriage of convenience. Our female character, you see her in the first book. She's the friend of the female character. She's like doing this magazine thing and has a column, and she's dating someone else, and I just did not care about her story. I didn't care that she had this like fake marriage thing to like get content for the magazine. Like, I just didn't connect to that, and I just did not care. Like, I felt more for him and everything that he was doing than she, like, but it was mostly her story, if that makes sense. So it was not my favorite, even though like my patrons really love that. I was surprised. And then I read Waitlist by Candy Steiner. This was on my TBR for July, and I really enjoyed this one. So this, I think, was Candy Steiner's first book, and I was actually really surprised. This is very emotional. So I gave it 4 stars. You see our female character, she is really struggling after she graduates high school. Her boyfriend breaks up with her basically and was like, I don't want anything to do with you. Like, I'm over it, even though they've been dating for a while, but she is a plus size heroine. And so she struggles. She starts seeing things with her weight now. Like, people are like making fun of her for it when they never really did before. And so she starts working out at the country club that her parents go to, their gym, and she starts having something with the trainer, and he's older. And I wasn't expecting how emotional her story and his story was. And it has a little bit of like a suspense element, which I did not expect from Candy Steiner. So I really enjoyed this. I'm glad I'm reading her backlist because I know she has a lot of like hidden gems. So 4 stars for this one. The next book I read was Kingmaker by Kennedy Ryan. So I read this for my Patreon exclusive reading vlog that I do every month. My patrons picked 2 books for me, and this was the first one I read. I gave it 4 stars. So I didn't realize that I actually read this book back in 2019. I looked it up, but like I didn't realize it was read. I thought I DNF'd it, but when I went to put my rating, I realized it was still 4 stars from 2019, and that's what I rated it this time, even though I didn't remember like the plot twists or anything like that. Now, one thing with this book, Kennedy Ryan writes solid. Like, I am not going to critique her writing at all. She writes a beautiful story. My thing is I do not like time jumps. They have to make sense. And there was 2 time jumps, and they were pretty big. The first one was like 4 years ahead. So our main male character is like rich, a son of an oil tycoon. She is Native American, and she is like protesting the pipeline stuff. And he shows up and is like, Dad, what are you doing? Why are you here? So he like jumps in with the protesters. So he's like obviously not for what his dad's doing. She doesn't know that. She doesn't know his identity of who he is, obviously, because if she knew, she would not want anything to do with him. But a time jumped 4 years, then they meet again. And then a time jumps 10 years. And that 10-year jump kind of like threw me out of the story a little bit. But I want to pick up Rebel King because I feel like with Kennedy Ryan, when she writes a duet, like the Grip trilogy, where you have the first book and the second book is always so much more and better for me. And I really enjoyed the second book more. So I'm excited to continue. I don't know when, but I was happy I read this one. And then I read Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. So this is her first book in the Gold Rush Ranch series. And I will say that I gave this 3.5 stars because it's her first book. There were some things that were I'm like, not my favorite. Enemies to Lovers. Obviously, Elsie Silver does banter amazingly. Like, all of her books have that, and I really love that. There was just so much of like the horse part of it that I was like, I don't connect with. You know what I mean? So it was still a really good story. I listened to it on Hoopla. The audio came out in July, which I was really happy that it was on Hoopla and I was able to grab it so I didn't have to use a credit, but it was a solid read. I mean, like, I only have 1 more book in Elsie Silver's backlist, or well, 1.5. It's 1 novella in this series, so I'm excited to finally get caught up and stuff like that, but yeah, it was still a really solid read from her. Then I read Real Regrets by C.W. Farnsworth. So if you know me, Fake Empire by C.W. Farnsworth is one of my favorite billionaire romances because they're both billionaires. And in this one, I was super excited. It follows the villain from the first book, but she's not the villain. She's just the ex of the main male character. And she said like some shitty things to the female character in that book. But basically, they get married in Vegas. The main male character's brother from the first book. So we see him. He kind of had an affair with his stepmom. Yes, that was a thing. But you see, it's like over in this book and stuff like that. So he's like kind of like staying away from women, but he meets her at a bar in Vegas. They hit it off. Then they get drunk later in the night and get married. And then now they're separated. Like, he lives in New York. She lives in LA, I think. So they're trying to figure all that stuff out, but they start kind of falling for each other. I just felt like there was like a disconnect a little bit with this story because they were so far away. I don't think that did anything to the story. I think it actually like hindered the story a little bit. So I gave it 3.5 stars. It was okay. But I read a really good fantasy romance for my cover to cover book club that I run with Sam from Sam Reads a Little. And that was Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent. Now, this one was really good. I gave it 4 stars because it was a little slow at the beginning. The first 50% is slow, but once you get past that, things start picking up. And I mean, like, it was solid. Like, Carissa Broadbent, I know now going forward, whenever she has a new release, I'm pretty positive that I'm going to enjoy it. I really don't have any desire to go back and read Daughter of No Worlds, that series. I read the first book and I honestly don't even remember a lot of it. So I don't have any desire to read the second or third book, but like the Crowns of Nyaxia series, love that. Cannot wait to see what she does with that. The only thing is I don't do monsters, and this was like a first book in a monster series with like other authors that she did. He has horns, and that's not really my thing. So that was a little weird for me. Yeah, it was just a really good forced proximity, enemies to lovers. She was a spy, kind of a hidden identity thing. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad we picked it. It kind of helped me get out of, not a slump, but like, I was like, okay, maybe I'm in my fantasy romance mood. Because after I read Off to the Races, I picked up Manacled by Sin-Lin Yu. Okay, this is a fanfic, okay? So McKay has talked about this. Jess from Honest Fiction has talked about this. Rachel from Rachel Reads and Sings has talked about this. Like, so many people here on Booktube talk about it, and I haven't read fanfic in probably 12 years. Like, I used to read on AO3 all the time because I didn't have Kindle Unlimited, and that's where you could read stuff for free because it was not published works. It was like people writing their own stuff and just publishing it there, like mostly fanfic. So this is a Harry Potter fanfic. It's a Hermione, so Draco and Hermione. When I tell you this, I spent 30 hours the last weekend of July reading this book. Like, I stayed in bed for 15 hours one day reading this book. I could not stop reading. It was so amazing. Like, favorite book of the year. Like, I can't even tell you without spoiling things, but it is a very beautiful love story with, and happily ever after. It does have a happily ever after, but there's just still a bittersweet ending because it's like, what if Voldemort won the war instead of Harry Potter? And it just really blew me away. I'm not gonna lie, it really blew me away. I was not expecting it, and like, I talked to McKay for probably an hour after, and she was getting my real-time reactions because I could not stop reading. I was just blown away with how well written. Like, sometimes I forgot, like, because I haven't read fanfic in so long, I forget that there are other things out there that is so well written besides, like, indie published and traditionally published things. And it just blows me away that, like, I forgot about that those kind of fanfics can still, even though they're not published, can still, like, hit me. So it was just a beautiful story. If you're looking for fantasy, you don't have to know anything about Harry Potter because I really don't remember, but it was still really, really good. I ended July with reading Glimmers of You by Catherine Cowles. So as I am filming this, it's August 1st and this book comes out today, but I got an ALC of it. And because I was feeling like everything besides fantasy was just okay, it was solid, I gave this book 4 stars. So one thing I will say is Catherine does romantic suspense really, really well. She is one of those authors that it doesn't piss me off. It complements the story really, really well. And our female character has diabetes in this book. So there was a lot of things going for it. I just think it was me. So I'm going to go back and reread it and highlight, because I do that with a lot of Catherine's books. I'll listen again and then highlight and read along some of my favorite parts. But I think once I do that, I will probably change my rating to a higher one. But I did like the diabetes representation in here. I think that she researches things really well, and it wasn't her overcoming the illness, it was her dealing with how people treat her with the illness, which I found really, really interesting because I didn't know that's where it was going to go. But those were all my books that I read in July, all 15 books. Drop me a pink heart emoji because I am wearing pink today and I'm feeling pink. But thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content for me. As always, I hope you're living a novel life, and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.